All right, so we're going to turn our attention right away to another matter, which, well, I'm not saying it's going to say directly related, but it's got to do with some of those comments and resolutions by the southern governors. Remember, they spoke about open grazing. There was a response from the presidency as well. There was a statement that was released. As a matter of fact, we might also just go ahead and just bring you some of them, maybe a point or two, where the presidency said to be taking some actions to end this recurring crisis between farmers and herders. And he says that he is committed to ending the conflict and also ensure that a sustained and lasting solution is proffered to the problem of killer herdsmen.
Well, part of the specific measures set to be approved by the President is to adopt the recommendations of a report by the Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sabun Anono, which the President signed off on in April before the actions of the Southern Governors Forum, which placed a ban on open grazing. Now, of course, this is in a statement by his media aide that it is very clear there was no solution offered from the resolutions of the governors to the herder-farmer clashes.
Well, here's the thing, you know, he also says that citizens of the southern states, and indeed citizens of all states of Nigeria, have a right to expect their elected leaders and representatives to find answers to challenges of governance and rights, and not to wash their hands of hard choices. And then it goes on. So that's a statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Govs. So we'll take a moment, and then we'll be back and get a guest in to speak on the matter. Don't go away.
In the southeast, you don't have cattle routes, but in the north, we have cattle routes. And so nobody is going to say ban, open grazing, in some areas in the north where there are cattle routes, where they move constitutionally from one point to the other. But in the south, there is no cattle route. And so for you to move from one point to the other, you have to move through farms. You have to move through, population, dense areas, and this is not very good. And that's what the southern governors and of course Southeast in particular are saying. Let's go back to our traditional method of relationship. We will no longer allow you to take your cattle from one local government to the other. And the implication is that these foreign headers also come in terms of mobile headers with AK-47. So that is a source of conflict. So anybody that is saying that there should be no ban on this thing is, on the other hand, saying that, look, these killings will continue. And that's what gave birth to ESN. Whether we support it as governors, we don't. But the people tend to support it because of the foreign headers that pretend that they are raiding cattle and then they are killing. And in my own village, a white man was kidnapped in my village that's doing construction, by these foreign headers. And we've encouraged the federal government, let's treat this, cattle raiding as a business. Take money from the federation account and develop ranches where there are designated ranches, especially in the north. And the northern governors are willing, but it's been frustrated.
Well, Emeka Okpoko joins us this morning to take this further. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So now, you've heard a lot about this. First of all, what was your initial impression to first the southern governors and then the response of the presidency?
Thank you very much. My initial impression to the Southern Governors Resolution is to even hail them in the sense that I am satisfied, I am impressed, I am convinced that their resolution is in tandem with the law. It is in tandem with legality, it's in line with the law. Therefore, I was quite very impressed. I said, this is good. Of course, you know that amongst them is a senior advocate of Nigeria. So I see him also being very instrumental in making such ingredients that will match the law. So I was quite very impressed, and I think that their resolution is perfectly within the ambit of our law. It is totally constitutional, it is legal, and I'm very happy with that.
Okay, but then there is that response of the Office of the President. The Presidency also released a response to it. First the Attorney General and then the Presidency. How did you receive those?
Well, with all respect, I also read the pronouncement of the Attorney General, and then the comparison he made of the cattle herdsman business and that of spare parts business. And of course, you know that if you look at the pronouncement, perhaps he made that in a hurry without actually looking into or doing a further deeper thinking before he got into that conclusion. I think if you look at the law, you will see that nobody is even preventing the herdsmen from moving around. It's not really about the human beings moving around. It's about the nature of the business. It's about the movement of the cattle from one place to the other. It's about the destruction of the cattle. It is about what they now do in the course of their business. So when you talk of all the constitutional provision, it deals with human beings. For instance, when you talk of freedom of movement as enshrined in the Constitution, they are dealing with fundamental human rights. Human. But in this circumstance, the cattle are not human. Nobody will just go and pick a herdsman if he's genuinely moving around like any normal person. There's no problem with that. But
oh dear. Well, I'm pretty sure that we're going to get him back. You know, I think we're already going into the terrain of law now, taking us through exactly what are the constitutional provisions.
That's why it's amazing to look at that, because I mean, yes, it's well, you know, incidentally, lawyers usually have different interpretations of the law. That's why you then have the courts, where the courts of law, where they then settle some of these matters. But yeah, interestingly, he was speaking about some of these matters, which when we get that line back, he'll speak on them.
Well, he said earlier he was trying to respond to his assessment of what the Attorney General of the Federation, who also is a senior advocate of Nigeria, said. Perhaps we should take a listen to that.
It's about constitutionality within the context of the freedoms expressed in our Constitution, enshrined in our Constitution. Can you deny a right of a Nigerian? For example, it's as good as saying, perhaps maybe the northern governors coming together to say that they prohibit spare parts trading in the north. Does it hold water? Does it hold water for a northern governor to come and state expressly that he now prohibits spare parts trading in the north? If you are talking of a constitutionally guaranteed right, the better approach to it is to, perhaps, you have spoken earlier about the constitutional amendment, is to go back to ensure the Constitution is amended. The Constitution, freedom and liberty of movement, among others, is established by the Constitution. If by an inch you want to have any compromise over it, the better approach is to go back to the National Assembly. Should be prohibited.
Well, so you want to respond to that very quickly. You were actually responding to that, earlier. We'll still get to the constitutional amendment part, but go ahead, please.
The constitutional guaranteed rights are for human beings. That's liberty, freedom of movement. That movement is for human beings, not the cattle. There's no constitutional guarantee for movement of cattle from one place to the other, or to the other. So you cannot, and then of course, if the Federal Attorney General believes strongly that what he's saying is within the ambit of the law, why not he goes to the court? Let him go to the Supreme Court, take all his states to the Supreme Court, and then let the Supreme Court take a decision on it one way or the other. But you cannot say that movement of cattle has anything to do with a constitutionally guaranteed right. It is not.
Well, we'll definitely will get him back.
Chapter 4. They come under Chapter 4. They come under Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Such enshrined rights are not for human. Are only for human beings, not for cattle.
But if you look at the text of that statement from the presidency, which says it is equally true that the announcement is of questionable legality, that's the Southern governors now, given the constitutional right of all Nigerians to enjoy the same rights and freedoms within every one of our 36 states and FCT, regardless of the state of their birth or residence. So, what do you say is the thinking behind this? Because if they say it is of questionable legality, it is true that it is of questionable legality.
It is not true. You see, when you talk of legality, what is legality? It is all about doing things in accordance with the law, doing things in compliance with the law, following the law. So, how can you look at, for instance, what the herdsmen now are doing and never think that whatever they are doing is in accordance with the law? It is not at all. And then, how can you then look at the situation and now say, oh, the decision by the Southern governors, mind you, the Southern governors are the elected representatives of the people. The person making that pronouncement is not even an elected person. The pronouncement of the aides of the minister of the president are not from unless there is a clear evidence that there was a direct instruction from the president that they are acting officially from him. Minus that, the governors are the chief law officers of the states, and the governors are the elected representatives of the people of their various states. So they have a superpower compared to the aides of the president. Then it is also not an issue for somebody to sit in his office and make pronouncement. It is beyond that. If you are satisfied or convinced that what they did is not in order, go to the court. Let the court make a pronouncement on that. The Supreme Court is open. Matters of such nature, the Supreme Court had original jurisdiction to listen to the federal government against the states. Therefore, you cannot say it is not legal. It is legal. As long as what decision they have taken has no provision in the Constitution that you can point at to say that this contradicts this provision, this runs riot with this provision, this is in conflict with the philosophy or the jurisprudential input of this provision. As long as you are unable to show that, you cannot say that that is not legal. Legality is not something that is within the whims and caprices of anybody. It's not even an intellectual imagination. It is a reality. It is a hard issue, hard facts. So you cannot sit down there and say, oh, there's no legality. There is. Because if you look at the governors, being the custodian, being the chief law officers of the state, they are entitled to protect their people. The whole essence of the government is to ensure the safety and security of the people they represent. If a government is unable to make provisions for safety and security, what then is the government doing? And how do you even expect national development or development of such states or regions once the government is unable to maintain safety and security of such places? Now, looking at what happened, you can see that the whole reason is because the governors want to ensure of the safety of their places. Mind you, even by the Land Use Act, which has its own anchor or flow from the Constitution, the governors are also have strong powers in relations to or in relationship with anything that pertains to land. They even regulate physical planning of the land. So can you now, what I'm trying to say is that I do not know what law you can come up with to say, oh, this is in breach of this law. You cannot. If you look at the entire Constitution, look at the entire gamut of the Constitution, look at the tenets, you will see no provision that you can say, oh, this resolution contradicts, attacks, or is in conflict with. Both in terms of pure fact, I mean, the Constitution as it is in letters and philosophy or jurisprudence behind the provisions of this Constitution. I mean, all
right, Mr. Okpoko, we'll go to break, but we'll equally get your perspectives about the points of law regarding some of the other recommendations or some of other recommendations of the Southern governors in that meeting. Don't go away.
The Channels 24 app means you'll always be in touch with the news. Get the latest local and international stories on the go. And there's our social media platforms for news from around the world. Watch the news live and play videos that matter to you. You can also check the Eyewitness section to report events around you. Just click on the Eyewitness icon and follow the instructions to upload your content. Channels 24 app, the news at your fingertips.
With subdued world economic outlook, coupled with trade tension and climate change, Africa is not insulated in all these, as globalization brings about interconnectivity of the world economy. On Business Incorporated, we answer those mind-boggling questions and dissect the issues as it affects you. That's not all. We also follow the numbers and what informs investor decisions in the global financial market. Every weekday at this time.
It is a meeting that cuts across party affiliations. Governors in the southern region of the country are here to discuss issues of national interest, security, economy, and health. 13 governors and 2 deputy governors are in attendance, with the exception of governors of Osun and Cross River states. The governors go into a closed-door meeting which lasts for about 4 hours. After that, Governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, briefs the press on the resolutions reached, part of which is the long-standing debate on restructuring.
Progress of the nation requires that urgent and bold steps be taken to restructure the Nigerian Federation, leading to the evolution of state police, review of revenue formula in favor of subnationals, and creation of other institutions which legitimately advance our commitment to and practice of true federalism. The meeting recommended that in view of the widespread agitation among our various peoples for greater inclusiveness in existing governance arrangement, the federal government should convoke a national dialogue as a matter of urgency.
On account of the security challenges brought about by farmer herder crisis, Governor Rotimi Akeredolu has this to say.
Caution of armed herders, criminals and bandits in the southern part of the country has presented a severe security challenge such that citizens are not able to live their normal lives, including pursuing various productive activities, leading to a threat to food supply and general security. Consequently, the meeting resolved that open grazing of cattle be banned across southern Nigeria.
Yeah, welcome back. Now, having listened to that, what legal provisions can be activated to the extent that it will lead to state police, as the governors did resolve?
Thank you. Yeah, for me, there are ways of doing it. First is that we know that the states have, or rather the states have been, for now, making legislations permitting security network, other security networks or frameworks, in their various states. We also know that some states call it vigilante, that is vote. For me, that is still a step in the right direction, that they make legislations or laws creating such things in their various states, creating vigilante or other security networks in their various states. Now, you also know that the police is an issue that comes strictly under the exclusive legislative list. That is, it is only the federal government that has the power to legislate on police. However, there are ways by which one believes that this can still be done. There could be a devolution of power, of police power, to the extent that the states can be given powers to regulate certain parts of it, certain parts of the police power, by way of devolution, so that there will be a statutory backing of that. That way, even the state police can come within that ambit. That is, powers will be statutorily given to such states to, within their own enclave, create police, as long as the state police, as long as they do not run in conflict with the police as created under the Constitution, as created or rather as empowered by the Police Act, I think Section 4. The power is there. As long as you do a devolution of such power, the states can actually rely or anchor on it to create police, create their own state police.
Okay, it looks as if it's frozen about. Naturally, you need to just find out. Look, does that then suggest that, Mr. Okpoko, okay, we've got you back now. Does that suggest then that the governors don't need to resort to the National Assembly to alter or amend the Constitution to ensure that it's properly spelled out that they can go ahead and form state police?
Sorry, before I answer that, I was also saying that you know that being in the Constitution, it is in the exclusive list.
Oh dear.
So we both did concurrent list.
Okay, you're about, we'll keep losing you. Go ahead now.
Yes, can also be moved into the concurrent legislative list. And if that is by constitutional amendment, if it is moved into the concurrent legislative list, it enables the police, the states, to also make legislations with regards to that. But as it stands today, you cannot do that unless there's a constitutional amendment. It requires either a constitutional amendment moving it, the item, I think under item 45 of the Constitution of the exclusive legislative list, moving it into concurrent concurrent list, in which circumstance even the states have powers to also make such legislation. You can do that. In the alternative, you can do a devolution of power so that there's be without necessarily amending the Constitution. They can statutorily delegate powers to the states to make such laws. So either way, you can, and that is my answer to that question.
Kimberlin asked you the other time about the way in which we should go about this in terms of the governors. Does that mean that the governors cannot in any way or significantly rely on members of the National Assembly to make significant adjustments to foster peace in their communities?
The problem with relying on the members of National Assembly is that you still talk about the constitutional amendment. And of course, as it stands today, to still amend the Constitution, you need the assent of the President. And then you can also see that even the President has a veto power or veto power. So there's still going to be a problem. Look at the composition of the National Assembly and see whether those clamoring for police, state police, will be enough in terms of number or majority number to be able to ensure the passage of that at the National Assembly. Mind you that even the amendment of the Constitution requires that you go to, depending on the nature of the amendment that is required, you may still need to go to all the houses of assembly of the states, of every state, and ensure you obtain 2/3 of the House of Assembly of the states. So the states cannot easily deal with issues of the police unless there's a legislation that is, as the constitutional. But what they are free to do, in my view, is that they are free to establish security framework like they have Amoteku, Ebubago, and all that. They have that power because the agencies that are setting up are agencies that will only complement the police. There are agencies that will help the police to curb crime. There are agencies that will only help the police to ensure that criminals are easily detected and then arrested. So what they normally do is when they discover criminals, they can help the police or take them to the police arrest them and then prosecute them. After all, the power private persons to arrest is also known to our law. Administration of Criminal Justice Act enables or allows even private persons to arrest. So the states, with the framework of vigilante framework, as long as such does not run in conflict with the statutory powers of the police, as long as it merely helps the police to curb crime and criminality, that is still allowable in law. And
all right, just one more thing as we wind down on this. Today, the public hearings of amending the Constitution will happen in different states. The committee kicking off on that one. But we've heard very great senior legal minds saying that the National Assembly cannot come up with the kind of resolve or resolution or constitution that the people want. What is your thinking about that? Do we need a new constitution? Is this the way to go about it? What should we be doing?
Thank you very much. My thinking is that, these things can be examined from my perspective, two different perspectives. There is this school of thought that strongly believes, and I think I also agree with them, that if you look at the Constitution itself, it creates an impression that we gave that Constitution to ourselves, we the people of Nigeria. We did not. And then if you go further down into that same Constitution, you will see where even created, where he stated that, oh, so as to ensure that we live in freedom, equity, and justice. Are we really, equality and justice, are we really in tandem? Are we really complying with that? No. Now, can you, looking at that, you cannot easily agree that the National Assembly can, on their own, propel the amendment of this constitution and amend it. Therefore, for them, the better view would be to have a national conference where the people's representatives will come and then agree on the totality of all this and see how best we can come up with a better constitution. That is a strong one. That is a strong one, because the National Assembly, for me, yes, much as they are the representatives of the people, but truly speaking, in reality and practice and practicality, do they really represent the interest of the people of Nigeria? There may be certain nationalities, and indeed, there are certain nationalities that have no or strong representative even at the National Assembly. So you see that it still requires a situation where a national conference will be the guiding principle. Let us invoke a national conference. People sit down, look at all this, critically look at the constitution, and come up with a totally new constitution. Because this constitution was foisted on us by the military. I'm sure the constitution was made within a very short interval. So you can see that the problems are so many problems in that constitution. Look at the federal character provision. So many, look at the veto power of the president. So that even when you amend, he can always frustrate you. So many things in the constitution that have problems. So for me, I am convinced that the best thing is to have a national conference. I will not, yes, but as the constitution says the House National Assembly can do all that. But with the nature of Nigeria as it is today, do you think that the National Assembly as constituted, even moving from one state to the other, will be able to meet the yearnings of the people? I don't think it will. For me, right. I believe.
All right, then, Mr. Emeka Okpoko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you for your time this morning. We'll be right back.